I guess this is pretty common question which you will encounter in your day-to-day environment, right? So I need to write a Python script, okay, which is going to run a command on a remote server. So like I said, you have this server one, server two, n number of servers you have in your environment, okay? And you want to see, I'm just throwing one example, how much is the RAM present on each and every system. So for example, if I want to run this free-m command on the n number of Linux server, which is present in the environment, like is, let's start with the one server and then we can, I mean, we can use this concept for the n number of server. So I have these n number of remote servers, or let's say I just have one server and I want to execute this free-m command to see what is the memory utilization on that, or how much is the amount of RAM which is present on that particular server. How can I do that? And I mean, all of you guys who's writing the scripts, I mean, that as a DevOps engineer, if you're writing a script, you definitely have encountered this situation. So how I'm going to tackle this one? Anyone know? Or is there a specific module I can do that? And just a hint, I mean, OS is just a general purpose module, and you can tackle this with the help of subprocess also. But there are some specific module which has been written to do this work. Anyone know what are those modules? And I mean, just based on experience, if you encountered these kind of a situation or these kind of a project, how did you tackle that? So first thing is, okay, let's forget about the module and anything. If from this laptop or from desktop, if I need to log into the remote server, what is the first step I need to do? I mean, forget about scripting and everything. If I need to log in from to this server, what should I need to do? Yes, exactly. I need to access to the server, right? And let's say I have hundreds of server, so I need to access to all those server, which is not a feasible solution, right? So in order to do that, there's a module which has been developed called Paramyco. Okay, and think of this Paramyco is just a kind of a wrapper on the top of SH. Okay, so let me show you how it does that. So like so far, which we have discussed, to use any module in your script in your Python, you first need to import it. Paramyco, right? And the first step which we need to do is something called establishing a connection. So rather than wasting your time, let me copy paste this one. So the way we are going to establish a connection to a remote client is something called sh paramyco.sh client. Okay, we need to call this method from a Paramyco module that we are going to use. Like you guys have mentioned, we need to use sh to connect to the remote server. Okay, but which remote server, right? We haven't passed its host name. Which user I am going to connect to that server? What will be the password I am going to use? So that I'm going to pass into this second line, which is called this guy. So here I'm specifying something called host name, right? The port in which I'm going to connect, the username which I need to pass it, and the password for the remote server, right? And finally, I need to specify which command I want to execute. Okay, so let's say I want to execute, like we discussed, free-m command, the remote server. Okay, and then again, what exactly I need out of it is the standard out. Whatever the output I have got out of this command, I need to read that output from standard out and decode it. Like the way we have seen that the output we are getting is a kind of a byte-based output. So I need to decode that one. And finally, please don't forget to close your session. Otherwise, this session will be open for some time, and depending upon your SH configuration, this session will eventually time out. But it is going to consume your resources. Okay. So again, we need to use this Paramyco module. We need to use the SH client. to establish the connection. And to actually establish the connection, we need to use something called, I mean, we need to supply the host name, the port, the username, all these information. And we will get the standard in, standard out, standard error, whatever we need. We can get output out of this command to see the command, which the exact command we are executing, and we can print out. Okay. Just a word of caution that when you are executing this command, let me show you something like this. And let me show you something. Do this. Okay. Anyone know what is the use of this known underscore host file in Linux? Actually, I do remove.
When you log into a remote server for the first time, then it adds an entry to this unknown host file.
Yes. And what exactly it is stored in this known host file then?
I think it's the public key of the remote server, some kind of a signature
Yes.
to identify.
Yep. So if you have seen that I have removed that known host file, right? Or I moved that file. If I try to log into that server, you see that it is getting all these signatures, right? And the public key of that remote server. And I need to say yes. And then I need to supply the password. And then I am in. Okay. Now think of it of your Python script. If you're going to execute this Python script for the first time, it is going to perform the same thing. It is going to wait for you for the prompt and wait for you to accept that public key from the remote server. Okay. So in order to avoid this situation, you need to add the entry in your script called something called. So what this is going to do, it is automatically going to uh, accept the keys or the public key from the remote server. So when I first wrote this script like long time back, I faced this situation and then I found out this particular setting using which you can have your public key accepted automatically. Okay. Now my next question to you guys, are you seeing any issue with this script? I'm seeing a really big issue in this script, like from the security point of view.
Passwords are stored in plain text.
Exactly, exactly. So that's the big issue, right? I'm storing this password, right? Which is not a good solution, right? And nowadays, if you, I mean, anyone who's using AWS, we know that basically the way we have connected to a remote server is like this, and we supply our private key, right? And then the username and whatever be the remote server IP, right? So isn't it will be good that this Paramyco module provides us some solution rather than specifying this password, I can specify the private key. So like we are thinking those guys also thought about it and they have used something called key underscore file name. And here after that you can specify your private key location. Okay. So this way you don't need to hard code the value of this the password in this particular file. Okay. Now we understand all these things, right? We can specify the host name like whatever, say like my host name is abc.example.com, whatever it is, right? Which is fine. But the idea is to extend this script to like hundreds of servers. I don't want to like write one script per server, right? I want this script to be executed like n number of servers. So in that case, I have two options. So let's say I have server 1, server 2, server 3, n number of servers. So let's start with like rather than executing the script to one server, I need to execute this script to hundreds of servers. Or let's start with 3. So let's say I have this server 1, server 2, server 3. So the way I can do it is like once I have this, either you can specify this server list in this file and you can define your server and then put it behind the for loop. Okay. And then you can specify this variable over here. This is one way. If you have n numbers of server. The other way to do it is like, let's say you have thousands and thousands of server where you want to see, you want to execute this command. So the other way to doing it is like store everything in a file, right? And then read that file, and from that file, get this value. Okay. So let's say I have a file called, I'm just throwing some example, servers.txt. And there I have listed like all of my 1,000 servers over there. Okay. You can read this file, and from this file, I mean, you can open this file, and again, you need to use the for loop. So basically, I can give you the example. Same thing. You need to use open to open this file name in a read mode. I mean, read mode is a default, so you don't need to open it in the read mode. You need to read line by line, strip any of white space and anything, and then use the same logic again. This is another way how you can execute the same command on the n number of servers. But the first time when you are going to set up this private key, that part you need to do it manually, right? You need to establish a connection between your the server from where you're going to execute the script versus the remote server where exactly you want to execute the script. So you need to establish a trust between them. And once the trust will be established, either you can define your number of list of server in that list, or you can create a file, and in that file you can list out all your servers, read it line by line, and then execute the script. Okay, so this is a short introduction of Paramyco, like how you can use Paramyco to execute a command on the remote server. So far, whatever we have seen, we have executed locally, but this is the first time we have seen how to execute a command on remote server. I mean, pre-m is one example, but you can execute any command on the remote server.